I've been going to prison for 38 years because my mother and father are both in prison.
4 minutes of gunfire, one Philadelphia policeman killed, and it was over. The members of the Back to Nature group move had been routed from their house.
The judge sentenced each to 30 to 100 years in jail.
That's my mama. When she was arrested, she was almost due to give birth to me. When she did give birth, it was in a prison cell. So this would have been her cell? Yeah.
This was a counterculture Philadelphia hadn't seen before.
The MOVE organization experienced so much hate and anger from the system.
It was a situation that everybody knew was going to explode. It was only a matter of time.
It's one of the few things I've seen that I'm never going to forget.
Rather than have a basis, dictate our lives, we'd rather be dead. Because to be free is not to be so-called living on this level. It's to be free of the oppressive power of a maniac like Rizzo.
They were so aggressive and so angry. Nobody sided with them.
Get that death penalty back, put him in the electric chair, and I'll pull the switch.
This was the MOVE house.
It was demolished, so there was no evidence.
When I learned that they were actually in prison, I might have been 13 years older. I started looking for something that would show their innocence. I wound up doing that for over 25 years. The MOVE 9 have been up for parole for the last 10 years.
The denial of parole is violating their constitutional rights.
What can I say about it? What can I do about that? Except just keep on pushing.
Handcuffs keep tightening like eyes that a bright light is in. Every time I fight, the reason I fight is to not fight again. Every time I fight, the reason I fight is to not fight again. Every time I fight, the reason I fight is to not fight again.
All right, y'all. So this is Codie Oliver, my husband. And while we did create the Black Love docuseries together, especially Tommy, has a lot of projects that I have nothing to do with. And 40 Years a Prisoner is something that he's been working on for a long time. And I think that it is not only beautiful, but I think it is so deeply aligned with what matters to us, which is, again, celebrating and affirming our community. And so I wanted to ask you, first and foremost, what made you make this movie?
There are a lot of things, but meeting Mike Africa Jr. and learning and realizing that this guy had committed his entire life to getting his parents out of prison, and to realize on top of that that he didn't have a shred of bitterness despite literally never having seen his parents together nor outside of prison was something that really hit me. And then to go beyond that, to understand that the things that his parents were in prison for, and things they were fighting against some 40 years ago, wrongful incarceration, police brutality, abuse of power, systemic racism, are the same things we're fighting against today. And it was something that I could not do anything about it.
A lot has happened over the last 4 years, and you've been working on this 3.5, 4 years. So how did the evolution of what it started as, and then observing all of the similarities to today, but how did that evolve for you?
It's a weird thing because as the movie came out and did a couple of festivals, there was this narrative that emerged about its relevance or modern day relevance and topicality. And that was actually heartbreaking because it's large in part about an incident that happened 40 years ago, and the other part is Mike's journey. But for people to point out and realize that those same things that they fought against are the same things that we're dealing with today was actually sad and disheartening. And I didn't actually change anything in the film. It wasn't, hey, these are the things we're going through today, so let me try to make it feel more relevant at all. And with somebody like Rizzo, there were so many people that I interviewed who compared him to Trump.
The mayor of Philly at the time.
Started as a B cop, became police commissioner, 2-term city mayor, and who effectively ran the city under the idea of you can have safe streets or you can have civil liberties, pick one. And the idea that he was very Trump-like, which came up again and again. I said it once in the film, and so it wasn't about belaboring that point, but it was just one of those things that we have so much more work to do and so much more progress to make as a country. And in many ways, it's just a cautionary tale because people had large in part forgotten about what happened in 1978 and they forgot about how things were. And so it's a relevance that is sad.
Sometimes it's hard to watch things that happen in the past that are hard, right? That are difficult to see and like re-experience. Why do you think it's important for everyone to see this film?
Also a complicated answer.
Do you think it's important?
I think that the idea of it being a cautionary tale is very real and true. And when we forget our history, we're often doomed to repeat it. And I think that people also significantly they in many ways ignore the scar tissue that comes from these sorts of events, where they focus so much on the day, but they don't think about the ramifications that linger on for decades, like literally decades, where his parents were in prison and it changed not only the course of their family's life, but their family's family and so much of what they did or weren't able to do. And again, we focus on, okay, this person was a victim of police abuse or police violence or police terror, which is terrible and should be dealt with. But what about that person who's never going to see their father again? Or never going to see their mother again? Or never going to have the support? And then they come up in a situation where they don't have that. And then they're demonized. Well, why didn't they have a father to help them grow the way they should have? Because of all these other systemic issues.
So there is so the Roots contributed to the music of the film and made an entire album around this film. And there's a song that is in the trailer, and at the end, the words, "Every time I fight, the reason I fight is to not fight again," right? Which struck me because you're from Philly and I'm from Texas, and I kind of joke that like you're always like ready to fight. But understanding the interesting thing about hearing the song in the context of the movie is that me hearing it kind of gave me it was more obvious. It became more clear that not only is that a personal experience, and this is not me talking about folks from Philly, this is what I've learned from my husband and from many people that but the experience of of living in Philly, being from Philly, is always being ready to fight. But the parallel of being Black in America and all of the fights that we have to jump into with the hope that we don't have to do it again. Like, it hit me so hard when I heard that song. It was just pretty amazing. And so how did you get so many amazing people involved? I know you pushed this thing uphill, but what was the response from the Roots, from John Legend and Common, who were producers on it? What was the response when they first encountered the film?
It was a 2-minute yes on everybody's part. And Common's been somebody who has been a friend for a long time and a big supporter of things, and along with the rest of Freedom Road, Shelby and Derek, they've just been incredibly supportive. And so when we talked about it, it was yes. How can we help? What can we do? John, I didn't know as well, but his partner, Mike Jackson, is from Philly, and I know him very well. And we have another project that we're doing together. And the second they learned that I was doing something to move, it was, what do we need to do?
Right.
How do we make sure that we are a part of this?
Yeah.
And the Roots, I didn't know at all. But Derek Dudley, Common's longtime partner and manager, he came to the office to watch the film, and we started talking about music. And I was thinking about the Roots at that point, and I don't know if I brought it up or he did, but he was like, they should definitely see this.
Yeah.
And so he made a call to Sean G., who's their manager, who's also from Philly, grew up in West Philly. He came to the office and watched, and he was like, we got to be involved. We have to be involved, and the guys are going to love this. And about 2 weeks later, Amir Questlove came to the office, and he watched it, and we talked for about 2 hours afterward. And he grew up in West Philly, and to just sort of understand the impact that what happened to Move had on him. And Mike's journey and all of it, it was something that was a pretty obvious thing. And then a couple of weeks after that, I went to New York and screened it at the HBO office for Tariq, for Black Thought. It was the same thing. It was just like, whatever we can do. Whatever we can do. And initially it was music, and then it turned into them coming on as EPs as well. And for somebody like Black Thought, who is easily one of the best MCs alive and of all time, that line, like when I heard that track when he sent it to me, it just stood out. Like it stood out, and for all those reasons, where there's a lot of context behind us talking about me fighting growing up, or the idea of me being ready to fight. It's like, it's a Philly thing. It's not a fun thing. It's not something that I'm excited about, but I did fight a lot. And the idea isn't to be proud of that. It's to have to be in a position where we don't have to fight. And Black Thought has always had the ability to synthesize stuff in such succinct, smart, moving ways. And when I heard that, it just stuck with me, which is why we put it at the end of the trailer. And it encapsulates so much. And that's sort of the power of having people who are really good at what they do and have a platform, and they're willing to use it to be able to make things better.
So I know my answer to this question, but for you, what makes 40 Years a Prisoner a love story?
40 Years a Prisoner is a love story in so many ways. And so I'm curious about what your answer is, but it's in many ways a son's love letter to his parents, but it's also a love letter to the parents who, despite all of what they went through, they were madly in love. Like nothing ever changed. They couldn't talk on the phone, but their love didn't wane in one way, shape, or form. Beyond that, and this one is probably a little less obvious, but it's a love letter to Philadelphia, where we need to do better as a city. We need to do better as a people, and if we don't own and accept where we've been, then we can't actually get to a place where we can deal with it and move on from there.
In our nation.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Boo. Y'all, 40 Years a Prisoner is on HBO and HBO Max December 8th. Thank you, Tommy, for doing that.